Use Ajax, the foaming cleanser.
Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is.
Double your pleasure, double your fun with double good mint gum.
J.C. Phelps. Oh, the big red letters stand for the Jello family.
Welcome to Common Point, a program for and about communication. I'm your host, Dan Thomas, and this week we have some very, very special guests, women in amateur radio. I'd like to introduce our guests. First of all, Mary Beaulieu, KB1 WFI. Mary was one of the first hams I met when I came to Connecticut, and thank you for joining us, Mary.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Next is Kate Wilson, KB1 OSU. Kate, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Eileen Phelps, N1 TUJ. And Ellen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Ham radio and women. It's not something that's been a popular hobby for a lot of women, but I'm seeing more and more get involved. Mary, how did you become part of this? And I hate to call it a hobby, I call it an avocation.
Well, actually, I had considered it, speaking to other hams, and I went to a meeting, a ham club meeting, just to see if I wanted to be involved, but the enthusiasm among the members was so great. I don't think anybody could attend the meeting among that group and not be inspired to check out the many aspects of it.
So now, how long have you been licensed?
Since 2011 in the fall. Okay. Actually, it was right after that October snowstorm.
Right.
Snow October.
And Kate, how about you? Now, how long have you been an amateur?
Since 2007, so it's 9 years.
What got you involved in the hobby?
After I retired, I joined the Manchester Community Emergency Response Team. And after a year or two, it seemed that most of the things that they were involved in required ham radio. You know, communications for search and rescue, communications for things like the Manchester Road Race. So I decided if I wanted to be really involved and really of use, that it was important for me to get my license.
And Eileen,
I'm glad I'm
how did your interest in amateur radio? How did that come about?
I was interested probably just as a sit alongside my dad for years, because he was a ham radio operator and he had gotten his license before I was born. So I was always listening and allowed to talk to people he talked to as long as he was present and operating the radio. So then when I married, I said, okay, now that's over. Go to something else. And 35 years into the marriage, my husband convinced me that I had to get a ham radio license. So I did.
So your husband's a ham as well?
Yes, he
How
is.
long has he been a ham?
Oh my goodness, since 1958.
Oh, so he's been a ham a long time. It took him a while to get you started then.
Yes, it did. I fought it tooth and nail. I had enough other interesting things I was doing.
Mary, women in amateur radio, did you find it uncomfortable at all when you first got involved? Because it's primarily a male avocation.
No, I can't think of one ham that I've met that I haven't enjoyed being in their company. The men are always welcome and they're always gracious. They're always very courteous to the ladies, I think even more so. And I think they like it that sometimes there are women in attendance to help contribute.
Well, I know Mary has kept us going because I've known Mary and I got our licenses almost at the exact same time. In fact, my old call was KB1WFF and hers is KB1WFI, despite the fact I took my test in Colorado and Mary took hers in Connecticut. Kate, how about telling us a little bit about CERT? What is CERT?
CERT was developed in California after one of the big earthquakes because they realized first responders, there's only so many first responders and there are millions of people that are in trouble. So they set it up so that there were people trained. We're trained to do first aid, we're trained to do some rescue in buildings and stuff like that, so that it kind of is a community-based thing that allows you to help out your neighbors pretty much.
So how did you get involved in CERT?
I just saw it in the paper, and I called up and I said, "Gee, are you interested in people that are not young?" Because usually, this was after I had retired, and I figured, And he said, "Oh yeah, absolutely." So I signed up and I took the classes, and they're all very interesting. Really enjoyed them.
Well, I found from something Mary said as well is that Ham's the most gracious bunch of people I think I've ever met. And being in the news business for as many years as I have, involved in a lot of organizations, I've never been involved in one that I've had more friends more quickly than I have in amateur radio, and people that are willing to help each other out if there is a problem. And even, whether it be minor or major, they're always there. And I find that just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, Eileen, as far as your CERT activities, what do you do in CERT?
I'm a ham radio operator
Okay.
to anything that needs the communication skills. We have, I think it's about 28 in Vernon, in the Vernon CERT group, and training more all the time. My husband is a teacher for the tech class for most of the time. So there's a lot of hams that have been people have been brought into ham radio through the tech classes. When we're running a shelter, we need to communicate between the police station, which is only across the street from our CERT shelter, but we find that a lot of times we could expect the communications, telephones and stuff to be swamped or no longer being used. So you can communicate with someone who's over there, and they can relay information. Same thing with a public safety building, where we also have the center of the operation for the snowstorms and things that we've had in the dark ages.
Yes.
Hopefully.
We all remember that.
Mary, what is your involvement in CERT? I know you've had some specialized training as well.
Well, I haven't been around since the many disasters that I think Kate has participated, maybe, and Eileen, in some events. Since I've joined, I've participated in events. The one that I've done the most is the Manchester Road Race, and that's a fun activity. So many people involved, and you realize how many volunteers that are working on it. It's very exciting. So it's nice to be part of that.
Now, what training have you gone through so far?
For the CERT?
For CERT.
For CERT, they do all kinds of putting out fires, they do navigation.
Sheltering. They do
The
sheltering.
sheltering. They do all kinds of training. Police and fire group that specializes in, helping with traffic and whatnot. I can't even think of them. What are the other aspects?
How about Kate? What training have you done?
Well, I actually became an EMT through the CERT group. There were a bunch of us. They wanted people that would have some first aid training, and since I was one of the first to break something during one of the training drills, I decided it would be a good idea if I did that. So there were a number of EMRs, which is lower level from that, and then EMTs and stuff, so that we were, because we have done a number of searches. We're out in the woods, and it's easy to slip or trip over something, that kind of thing. So it's kind of neat to have that. So.
I think one of the Eileen, how about you? Any specific area that you're more interested in than others as far as CERT?
In the CERT group? No, pretty much all of them. The one thing that I've been doing for Vernon lately is, and as often as I can, and sometimes I can't, so someone else has to do it, is to go into Hartford and represent the town at a CERT area meeting, Area 3 meeting, and take notes like crazy about what other people are doing in the area, and then try to keep up with that. Leaves, for one reason or another, moving, dying, whatever. You do have to have, you still have to have that list of how it was done.
Mm-hmm. Mary, what advice would you give someone that's interested in becoming a ham, but more importantly, becoming part of an ARES or a search group?
I would recommend anyone to look at, contact probably the ARRL in Newington, the Amateur Radio league headquarters, and they'll put you in touch with a ham radio group, and that's probably the best way you'll get to talk face to face with people and to find out the many opportunities that are available. I mean, there is emergency communications, there are traffic nets that people that relay messages from disaster areas. For example, like when 9/11 happened, one amateur operator in my town said that he worked 48 hours taking message out of New York City. So to talk to people is nice. So you just attend a club.
Kate, what would you say to somebody that said, well, we've got communications, we don't need amateur radio anymore?
We do, as long as the communications are working, but the cell phone towers require batteries, and when they're gone, there's no cell phones. If you don't have a landline, which many people have given up, or if they come down, then you don't have a phone there. The amateur radio is a different kettle of fish. It stays up. I think the repeaters and things like that are individually cared for. That's not like a big company that's got to race around. So I think they are taken care of so that if there's a need for the generators to be up and running, they're taken care of. So you can pass messages all across the country.
We've seen this many times. Communications, ACell systems get swamped almost immediately. That happened during the
Absolutely.
Boston Marathon bombing. I remember reading about that, and I've known it to happen in other major events. And amateurs, we're not there to take over. But that's one thing that was drummed into my head, I guess, when I got involved at ARES, which is the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, and it doesn't get quite as involved as CERT does. But it is that we're there to help. If you need assistance, if you need communications help, we're there. We can handle it. We've proven we can handle it. But we're not there to get involved, to try to give orders, to try to take over. That's not a position we're in.
We're good soldiers.
Excuse me, Mary, go ahead.
We're good soldiers. Take orders.
Right.
But in an emergency, things can easily get out of hand as far as communications are concerned. But these guests of mine today in CERT are trained in other areas as well, such as Kate, who is an EMT, which I think is wonderful. I figure at my age, I'm probably not going to get involved I'm probably more likely to need an EMT than to become one. But we can all still communicate. Now, what's I'm going to talk to Eileen for a minute about that. What would be the best advice you could give to a young woman who said, I'm thinking about amateur radio, but I just don't know what it does? What is it?
As soon as you say young woman, I think of the 3 granddaughters that I have, and I don't see any of them being particularly interested at this point. But one of them, their father is a ham radio operator, so if she wants to become a ham. I think the thing that I would urge someone who is interested is to search out a small club, a town club, or an area club of ham radio operators. They're usually very welcoming. Like Mary said, the time that she went and nobody chased her out the door. They're also there to encourage you to study, and we can help in that way. But I don't think you tend to go out and recruit hams. You just kind of do it and make it look interesting to other people. And how do you do that? And, oh, I can do that on my cell phone. And then it's like when your cell phone breaks or you drop it or the battery doesn't work anymore or the cell site. A cell site? What's that? These kids don't know that. They just assume that it's in the air.
It's a point of communication. We can communicate with each other. I can call Mary on through a repeater or even directly and talk to her. There's nobody else involved. I'm not paying the phone company. It's our equipment. We own it. We maintain it. And I think that gives you a certain amount of confidence. Am I right, Mary?
That's true, that's true. When you do get on, you can, the nice thing about radio, it's in time. There's no recording. It's all live. And when you get on the radio, you never know what you're going to experience. You can get on the radio and the bands may not be working right. The propagations aren't working and you hear very little. But then you can get on and there's excitement and you don't know where to plop yourself because there's activity across the band.
Did you ever broadcast from Field Day?
Oh, yes.
When we have the Field Day event, which is usually a yearly thing. And that's really fun because that's emergency only. You're on top of a hill, hopefully, if you get out of town with a hill.
Yeah.
And you may sleep overnight in your tent, but when you're up and about, you're on your radio.
There
talking
isn't
to
a
people.
ham that we know that doesn't look forward to Field Day.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
that's,
There's food involved.
How about you, Kate? As far as Field Day is concerned, can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
I haven't done a lot with Field Day, but it's a group that gets together, and like I said, there is food, and they're very good cooks. But you can go in, and even though I'm not a diehard and a good techie kind of thing, you can sit down at the radio and you can take calls in from all over the country. You know,
And you're a woman.
And
And,
I-
your
yeah, and-
voice catches somebody who's on the air.
Yeah.
And says, "Ooh, a woman, get her."
yeah, exactly.
That's how rare we are.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to put Mary on the spot because she is a Field Day coordinator for the Vintage Radio and Communications Amateur Radio Club. And Mary, what have you got planned for Field Day this year?
Well, we have a lot planned where we'll have many stations set up. Hopefully we'll have good weather. That's our first request. So we hope Mother Nature cooperates with that. And then we'll have many radios set up outdoors on the lawn at the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum in Windsor. And anybody who is, it's open to the public. That's one of the main reasons for it, is to invite people to see operators and to even take the opportunity to operate on the air if they'd like.
And that, by the way, that event will be, what's the date?
June 25th
June
this year.
25th. Our group will be at the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum at 115 Pearson Lane in Windsor. But there are field days all over the country, all over the world, actually, and they'll be operating. And if you get a chance, if you're interested in amateur radio at all, this is a wonderful opportunity to talk to hams, to get on the air, because we'll have something called a go-to station.
Get on the air.
And you can get started. How about you, Kate? Are you going to take part in Field Day this year?
Probably will take part in part of it. I'm not so much on the overnight. So
We might
but,
need you.
but I have in the past. It is kind of fun to try and pick up different stations from different areas and
Different
keep tabs
bands.
and stuff like that.
Different bands.
Yeah, different bands.
We
yeah.
tend to use our walkie-talkies, our small handheld radios, on 2 meters. So if you have a different band open to you on Field Day, and there are,
Yeah.
that's
There's
fun.
all kinds of
That's-
aerial antennas that,
Yes.
tall ones, small, short ones you're picking up. There was even the Morse code.
Yes.
SW, is
Yeah,
it?
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's kind of interesting.
Shortwave.
Yeah, we'll have.
And that's not a requirement anymore. So that's one of the things I think that may cause people to kind of back off. But at the same point, it is no longer a requirement to be able to do Morse code, to be a ham operator, which kind of opens it up to people like me that aren't necessarily great at hearing the differences and stuff.
Right.
And you don't have to be an electronics genius to be a ham.
No,
Mary,
we're proof.
but I think, it's something we try to tell them. The technician's license gets you in the door and gets you started. There are 3 levels. And there's some rules and regulations you need to know. You need to know some about bands and some basics. But that's all it is. And if you learn that, you can start operating. And once you do, you're going to want to go to the next stage,
That's true.
which is the general. Now, Mary, you have a general.
Yes.
Kate
Every general.
and Honey.
Eileen.
Okay. And then the step beyond that is called an extra. And that is more involved. The general and the extra are more involved in the technical areas. And probably primarily the extra is a more technical test. But if you study, you can do it. And you can go as far as you want to go. A lot of hams out there that I've talked to have reinvented the hobby or reintroduced themselves to it. I've talked to a couple in just the last week or so that said, you know, I haven't been on the air in 25 years,
Oh my goodness.
but I dug my stuff out and I got on the air and I'm loving it. I'm having something to do.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
it's something that will last a long time. So what advice would you give, I guess, Mary, your granddaughter, say that, or one of your daughters was interested in ham radio? How would you tell them to get started?
Well, if they could hook up and get to somebody that with a shack that has a radio, or to a club that has radios, and to watch and listen, and then from there you're going to have questions that are naturally going to come. So the best thing is, like Eileen said, just go to get in contact with someone in the town, specifically a club, and then you're going to have a lot of people. They're all trying to help, and there's lots of encouragement.
They encourage the new ham. They help the new ham. We have one thinking about specifically a Skip, W1FTE, who has cartons full of equipment, and he'll give a new ham a radio, set them up, and show them how to use it, just to get them started.
And he doesn't hesitate. In a heartbeat, he's out there with his bow and arrow.
Yes,
We call
yes.
him Robin Hood.
Yes, and he helps people
shoots
get
up
their antennas in the air
antennas
too.
up.
But it is a lot of fun, and again, you can go in any direction you want. If you just want to talk on the radio, to talk around the world, you can do that. If you want to do community events, you want to have some community involvement, that's certainly what these young ladies are doing here, working with CERT and in that event. And there's just so much you can do. And there's satellite. You can actually get involved with a space station.
That's right.
Called an ISS.
That's right.
And in fact, we're involved in trying to do that again, and we hope to do a show on that one of these days. But just so much is available out there. And again, it is not a male-only hobby. I'm seeing more and more women become involved, becoming interested, and getting in there. And we need them. We need them in these situations to handle emergencies. Which one of you has been involved in a situation that was an emergency?
We probably all have, but
No.
well,
Kate?
we had there was a shooting at the Hartford distributor in Manchester, and we were involved in that. We ended up doing communications. We ended up helping with traffic. We ended up with getting people back together with people from HDI. So in that, and the storms, that snowstorm, we did a lot with that. Communications again. My own telephone line had come down, so you know, it's one of these things that you just, it's a nice thing to have. And if you can get into a club like the Bears, because we're all part of the Bears Club too, then you've got the camaraderie that you know, and can get involved in these events. And you know, you're not being forced into doing something every week. They're very open to letting you use the skills that you have and be a help. So,
Eileen, how about you? Have you been involved in any emergency situation?
Yes. In Vernon, we had the greatest snowstorm while the leaves were still on the trees, and so much snow on the roofs of the schools that in New England you say, why do we have flat roofs? Well, schools and businesses, a lot of them have flat roofs, but we actually had people, not from CERT, but the organization of it, getting people up on the roof of the high school to get the snow off. And of course, then it all came down. It was a big pile, so that's even worse, trying to get rid of it, but they did.
Wow, how about you, Mary?
As far as
Any emergencies?
no, I didn't get the license until after that. The day of
After
the
that.
snowstorm, that's when I got my license. It was kind
Oh.
of neat because I took my test and I passed, and I was attending a simulated emergency test session. And when I walked in the door, they said, "This is the real thing. We're going home now to actually operate from home."
Wow.
And one of the hams, I had just gotten licensed. I did not have my own radio. I didn't even have a call sign. And he handed me his radio and said, "Here, you can take this and play with it, get used to the radio." And it was nice because I had no electricity for 9 days.
Wow.
And that I was able to listen. And if I had a call sign, I could have communicated. But I learned a lot just listening for that week.
Well, one other area that has had a lot of interest during bad weather is something called Skywarn. And that's something I think all of us are involved in. I've been involved in it, and it's one of my favorite parts of amateur radio, in which we actually train weekly. We have nets, but we report the weather with boots on the ground from specific neighborhoods to the National Weather Service. And they take our information, and there is training coming up. As a matter of fact, this summer, just do a check out of Skywarn on the internet, and there will be a training session available. That's something that I think is very, very important. That does a lot of good. Any final comments, Mary?
No, I would like anybody who's even considering it to give it a try.
Kate?
I agree. It's a lot more fun than, I was kind of timid about it to start out with, but it's a lot of fun.
How about you, Eileen?
Again, it's the people that you play with and you work with that work. We support each other, sometimes not necessarily to somebody's satisfaction, but you learn quick when you're put in a position where you have to do something. But the support of other people who know it and have been for years doing ham radio, they're usually very, very gracious in helping you.
I'd like to thank our guests, Mary Beaulieu, KB1WFI, Kate Wilson, KB1OSU, and Eileen Phelps, N1TUJ. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about women in amateur radio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
For Common Point, I'm Dan Thomas. Have a good day.
Pepsi-Cola, it's the pot, 12 ounces, that's a lot, twice as much to do. Pepsi-Cola is the drink for you. Nickel, 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 trickle, 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 nickel, 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 nickel. Pepsi-Cola hits the spot, 12 full ounces, that's a lot, twice as much for a nickel too. Pepsi-Cola is the drink for you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.